Education, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the Catherine B. Reynolds Foundation Lecture Series on Leadership. Welcome Reynolds and Zuckerman Fellows, as well as members of the Kennedy School and Ed School communities. This lecture series on leadership features discussions with prominent social entrepreneurs so that students will better understand the challenges they will face as the next generation of leaders in the public arena. I am absolutely thrilled to be here to introduce to you one of our alums who has truly made an impact in the world of education practice. Geoffrey Canada graduated from the Ed School with a master's degree in 1975. And let me tell you, whenever anybody asks whether or not our alums make a difference, it's the first name that I mention. Many of you know he has been focusing his energies and talents on the problems of troubled inner city youth. Since 1990, Mr. Canada has been the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Harlem Childrens Zone. Probably many of you saw the June 2004 cover story of the New York Times Magazine, in which the Zone's project was called, quote, one of the most ambitious social experiments of our time. The Harlem Childrens Zone offers an interlocking network of social services, education, and community-building programs to thousands of children and families in a 60-block area within central Harlem. Last October, Mr. Canada was named one of America's best leaders by U.S. News and World Report. And just last January, Mayor Bloomberg asked Mr. Canada to co-chair a task force assigned to significantly reduce poverty in New York City. The work of Geoff Canada and the Harlem Childrens Zone has become a national model and has been the subject of many profiles in the media. Perhaps you have seen the Zone's work profiled on The Today Show, Nightline, Charlie Rose, or NPR's On Point. Geoff is also the acclaimed author of a very influential book, Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun, A Personal History of Violence in America. Today, Geoff will be speaking about some of the pivotal points in his career, the challenges that he believes the next generation of social entrepreneurs will face, and some thoughts on the necessary preparation for someone starting off as a social entrepreneur. Please join me in welcoming Geoff Canada.
And good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Dean said some wonderful things about me. I actually wanted her to say some more. No, but usually I say, oh, no, don't go through the whole thing. It's fine. But I was looking at the sort of bio sketches of the folks in this room, and there's some pretty intelligent people in here. I got my thesaurus, thought I was going to get like 8 or 9 really big words. I said, oh, well, I'll just be my regular self. And, but I was absolutely impressed. I'm not kidding. Actually, was very impressed at seeing who's here in the room. And it makes me feel hopeful about this country. But I'm going to say some things that may push you and challenge you in some ways. Because I think that my field in particular has disconnected our practice from the political reality of poverty and oppression in America. And there's some things you can do by really perfecting your practice, thinking about what it is that you're doing that's going to have an impact on the folks that you care about. But there are some larger forces at work that I think we can be naive about if we're going to really create in this country true opportunity for all of our children. Recently, a bunch of information has started to come out. Usually this kind of stuff leaks out, but it's really starting to come out pretty rapidly, and I think some major public forums have been held on the plight of poor. I mean, people have been started looking just at what's happening to the youth of America in general, right? So, the Gates folk looked at high schools. What was happening with the high schools? 30% of American children aren't completing high school. Just shocking number, just shocking. And then you begin to look within sort of the groups, the vulnerable groups, vulnerable populations. you find some really troubling things. So here I have been at this since 1975. Actually, which Dean McCarthy had mentioned that year. I thought none of you were alive then. That's all right, though. That's all right. Maybe one person. But my work and the work that we're doing at Harlem Childrens Zone is really a continuation of the struggle that's been going on in this country from the very beginning. But the part that I'm aware of, the part that I was born into, was the struggle for civil rights for African Americans in America. Then, when I was a kid, growing up, you knew the good guys and the bad guys. It was really clear. There was no sort of fudging around the edges. People had names. You knew the name of Bull Connors. Growing up, you heard Bull Connors, you knew. Just anyone said, "Oh yeah, I like Bull Connors," immediately you knew this was an enemy. The KKK. This was in your face. This was a debate that was raging. They weren't apologetic. They were not hiding in the 50s. This was right out there, them saying, if we don't do something, we're going to lose this country. And there was a debate that was going on here in America. The lynchings, Jim Crow laws, all of that stuff was clear. And a group of us as young 12 and 13-year-olds thought, once we straighten out that stuff, this is going to be fine. We're going to have equality. This is going to be a land that, based on your merits, you're going to be able to achieve and do well. And so we created some responses. And the responses are really quite interesting. You had everything from SNCC to the Nation of Islam to the Black Panther Party. I mean, when I was in college, there was really a left and a right and a center. And we had people who were talking armed revolution. People said, now those were leftists. And then you had people very concerned, said, okay, well, those folks are not. Today, people think Marion Wright Edelman of the Children's Defense Fund is a radical. See what I'm saying? That's an interesting thing. They consider her a radical. So that woman is radical. Look, radical. I mean, Marion was so centrist, a lot of us would have said we wouldn't even deal with her back in the 60s and the 70s because of her centrist. But the country has shifted over, and our thinking has shifted over, and people have accepted this. And that, some of that is, both extremes have died down. The racist group that stood up and said, you know, we are against, like that's died off, and a lot of the extremists about guns has died off. So you say, where are we 50 years later? What has happened? The marches on Washington, the demonstrations, what's changed in America for African Americans? Well, recently the Times put out a report on the status of black men in America. And it looked at in 1980 and then in 2002. And what it found was that in 1980, if you're African American man who did not go to college, that was the group, that 34% of those men didn't have jobs in 1980. By 2004, it was 50%. So, if you dropped out of high school in 1980, you're African American, you're a man, 41% were unemployed. 2002, 72%. 72%. Let's think about that. When you know what 72% of a male population is unemployed, but just start thinking of the third world countries you're thinking about. You would say, oh yeah, 3 out of 4 folks are going to have a job. It's not possible. They're talking about a section of, you know, the folks who are not graduated high school. When you begin to look at the numbers, you find that African Americans about 50% dropping out. Now you think of 72% of that 50%, you start getting, I'm not real good with math, right? you start getting some numbers now. It's not to make you say, wait a second, what's going on there? So if you say, where have we gone in all of this time? And I'm taking responsibility for this. This is my field, what I do for a living. So I'm not saying someone else's. I'm saying, look, we the practitioner, where have we gone? We've gone backwards. We've actually gone in the wrong direction. This thing is moving and getting worse, and it's not getting better, and it's happening on my watch, right? I'm 54, so there's no one for me to blame, right? This is like, right now, this is what we have allowed to happen. So, what happens to all these folks? Well, in 1995, 16% of black men were in their 20s were in prison. That number has gone to 21% now. By your mid-30s, you've not gone to college. 60% of African American men will have spent some part of their life in jail or prison. So, how many black men are in prison? New York State, somewhere between 31 and 32,000 black men are in prison. You know what cost prison in New York State? State cost about $30,000. In New York City, we've got about 8,000 black men in jail. Cost is $60,000 a year. That's the biggest thing. Just think about it. Just start put those numbers together. About 40,000. That's 40,000 men. If you look at what we're paying now, I'm a funny kind of guy because I've gotten a little older. You know, I run some programs, and some of my programs, they get pricey. The program might get up to $12,000, $13,000 per year per child. I'll have these wonderful people come in. Whew, Jeff, this is not, you can't replicate this. How are you going to replicate this? It's $12,000 a year per child. Who's going to be able to do that? I say, wait a second. I have never seen them turn a black man away from jail. I just haven't seen it. Ways we can't replicate this. This thing is costing us $30,000 a year. We've got to come up with some other plan. I mean, it's not possible. It's not possible to look at these issues and say there's something wrong with this equation. There's something wrong. But see, I got Raheem at 7. And I have a lot of well-intentioned people debating whether or not the money I spend on Raheem produces an outcome that they should support. Well, Geoffrey was looking at Raheem's reading score. Now, how many years can you get him to read better in a year based on this money that we're giving you? Okay, so I have this debate, we talk. Half the people say, look, I know, Raheem, we'd love to help you, Jeff, but we're not quite sure you're going to produce the right results for Raheem. Raheem turned 17. Drop of the hat, Raheem is now going to get a minimum of $30,000 a year spent. No questions asked. What are the outcomes you get? What are the outcomes? Let's do research on this. So if we send Raheem to jail for 10 years, we spend $300,000. What do we get from Raheem? What does he do? What positive outcome does that produce? Not one thing. There was no discussion about it. There was no debate about it. It is just ongoing. And this is being repeated across America. One place after the other, after the other, after the other. So I'm saying, how is it on our watch? And by the way, these were not the numbers that existed 30 years ago. 30 years ago, you would not find more than about 10 or 12,000 people in our prisons and jails of African American men. This number has skyrocketed. So is there some connection with this unemployment issue and all these men in jail? That somehow connected. Well, look, you could debate that one way or the other. Well, maybe there's a connection. The question is, so what do you do about it? That's been a trail that I have been on for my whole career. You know, when I was here in '75, there was still debate at Harvard, at the Ed School, of whether or not there was some genetic predisposition that African Americans had for some things not involving intellectual pursuits. And I was just out. I mean, there was a lot of outrage in the '70s over that kind of foolishness. But it was out there. There were scholars. They were saying it, and it had to be debated, and it had to be refuted. And people were spending time and energy with that. But my life was really changed by a Harvard professor here when I was a graduate student. I was an undergraduate student. I was up at Bowdoin College, and I was a psych major. And I double major psych and social. And I wanted to do this work since I was a child. And I really felt that psychology was part of it. That there was some underlying issue, some pathology I could figure out and how to help these kids to do well. And I was hoping to get a lot of, you know, Freud and Jung, but it was none of that at Bowdoin. These guys were learning theorists, and that was all. And we did rat studies, and it was on and on and on. I wasn't really thrilled because I didn't see any practical application for any of this stuff, right? And so I graduate Bowdoin. I come to Harvard. They have a visiting professor. His name is Bruce Baker, and he's a behaviorist. And I go in, and he's saying that there are things that cause people to behave in certain ways that can be manipulated. And if you manipulate them correctly, you can change a person's behavior from one thing to the next. And he had a room full of Harvard students. They were sitting there, and he was up talking about reinforcement schedules and going on. And everybody's eyes glazed over. He said, I had spent 4 years learning about this stuff, and I never knew you could use it. So he was up there talking. And as he was going to talk, my hand went up. I said, Dr. Baker, isn't it true that if we change that reinforcement schedule to an intermittent reinforcement schedule, we would make that behavior even stronger? And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and it was like love. Here's a guy who understands me. So I take this class. He and I are in the same place. Because see, I think this is an answer. Now I'm looking for an answer. I think here's a guy got an answer. Dr. Baker's basic belief was all children could learn. We simply had to figure out how to motivate children. And things that motivated children change from one child to the next. And if you were a scientist, your job was to figure out what the motivator was for this child and how you could use that to change that child's behavior to get children to do positive things. Now, he wasn't doing this with the average population of students. He was focused on the most troubled students that we could find. I mean, we were looking for children with serious medical diagnoses, schizophrenia, autism, all kinds of maladaptive, acting out behavior. We wanted the worst kids we could find in 3 states. We were looking in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and I think it was Maine was the 3rd state. And we were going out, and you had to interview to come to our camp. Now, we were getting kids who could not be educated. So if a kid could be in a classroom, they could not come to our camp. These were kids that there were no education options for them. And we were going to give their parents 7 weeks sleepaway camp in Center Ossipee, New Hampshire. Now you have to imagine, you're a parent. You have a child. This kid is so bad, no school will keep them. Right? You can't leave the kid with the neighbors. You can't leave the kid with your friends. Nobody wants. This kid is chained to you by your hip. And here we go saying, we will give you 7 weeks in the summer of freedom. We had a line of parents out there trying to get these kids in now. So there was an interview. Kids would come in, we'd be sitting at the table, the parents and child would be at the table, we'd come in and say, we see you have the child, we'd ask a few questions. If a parent and the child successfully got through that interview, they could not come to our camp. They could not. But the parent who sat there, and she said, this Jose, he's really a very nice kid. And Jose would knock the water over. Jose, don't do that. And Jose would smack her hand. He's usually not like this. And he grabs her hand. And she's thinking, Jose, you're in. Let's go. The fascinating thing about Dr. Baker was that he actually knew what he was talking about. We would get a kid, You sit there, he said, the underlying philosophy of behaviorism, right? He laid all of that out and said it'll work with anybody, any child with any issue at all. We'd have a kid no one could work with. He'd walk into the room, you say, stand back. And everybody would move back, and we would watch him work. He could make it work. The power of that. You understand the power of that? The power of watching a bunch of folks fail, and a person walking in and say, stand back, watch me. Every single child. There was not a child I had ever seen him with that he could not reach. I said, okay, there's something here. So we take these kids, we take them away to the woods, we put them on behavior programs. Now this is the time, this is really different. In 1975, they were putting children with Down syndrome in state hospitals never to be let out again. They just assumed you couldn't teach these kids. There was just a whole group of kids that were locked up in institutions that people said you simply, kids who had hydrocephalic kids, lock them up. They would not even try, no one could teach them, they just said there's nothing you could do. The movement to get these kids out of the institutions and into the classroom was happening right then and right there. We were just right there as part of that, doing some of the research around what it would take. So, 5 weeks into the summer program, we'd invite parents in. The same experience for every single parent. Parent would come up there, we'd say, once you come see your child, we're going to look through a one-way mirror, but we don't want the child to see you, and we'll let you see what your child is doing. Children who had never sat down, had never listened, had never picked up a pencil. Parents would walk in, they would see their kids sitting at a table, paying attention to an adult, and the parents would all break down in tears. Never thought they'd ever see it again. Some of the kids were 12, some of the kids were 9, some of the kids were 15. Parents thought I'd never see the day. I left there and went to New York to get to work with kids. And I saw perfectly normal. Now, see, people say normal. No, I'm talking average. See, people talk hyperactivity, they're giving all these kids medicine. Most teachers have never really seen a hyperactive child. Not a really diagnosed hyperactive. Now, we had some hyperactive children that literally could not hold a thought in their mind for more than 4 to 5 seconds. That was your time span to connect with that child. You show me any kid, I give him a video game, that kid, that child is not hyperactive. I don't know, he sit down, he'll pay attention, watch TV, that child's not hyperactive. I can deal with that child. I don't need medicine. We took all of our kids off every medicine. The only thing they were allowed to have was if the kid had seizures, we'd let them keep their seizure medicine. All the other stuff, we didn't need that stuff. We could get those kids. But this was hard work. That's when I found out teaching is hard work. Right? See, I'm telling you, this stuff was hard work. We want to see that every single kid, every one of those kids, you had to figure out where were they and where were you taking them, and that was the issue. Now, we weren't getting all of our kids so they were catching up on grade levels, but all those kids could learn, and all of them began to learn, and we had kids who were diagnosed with autism, which at that point was like a terminal diagnosis. Right now, autism, the word is used up. At this point in time, no one knew how to reach these kids at all. But we could get those kids so they could actually enter sheltered workshops and begin to learn how to do work that, in fact, we were sorting things in different bins and stuff like that. So I was convinced that there's absolutely no reason. When people talk, you hear all this stuff, well, every child can learn, every child can learn. Oh no, I really believed every child could learn. The only question was that some kids, you didn't have to work so hard, and some kids you had to work really, really hard. But that was all up to the adults. That had nothing to do with the kids whatsoever. So, early on in my career, I'm thinking about this. I get to the Harlem Childrens Zone in 1983. We're working with a small population of kids. And by 86, 87, I realized for every child I'm helping, there are 20, 30 that we're not helping. They just don't get to us. I'm starting to get these long lines of folks waiting to get into the program. I thought, I don't think we're winning this thing. I just don't think we're winning. So about 7 years ago, we began to think about what would it look like to win. We decided we were going to focus on a targeted geographic area, and this is why. We've known, well, I first started research probably around 86, 87, that 60% of all of the folks in the state prison system come from 7 community districts in New York. If you live in New York City, you would know the district. You would know Bedford-Stuyvesant, Central Harlem, East Harlem, South Bronx, Southeast Jamaica, Queens. They have been the case forever. So my thought was, you don't have to do a research project to figure out where, right, folks were in trouble. I mean, they're going on forever. So this was just simply, if we know these communities are producing these kinds of outcomes for its kids, let's just go into those communities and straighten this out. Right? It's not like a big deal. So what is it about those communities that produce these kinds of outcomes? Well, we found that nothing was working. Schools weren't working. Health system wasn't working. The criminal justice system wasn't working. There wasn't substance abuse treatment. That these kids faced every possible barrier, literally from birth. When we began to say, well, what is it that you should do? You have to do everything. So you can't do everything. First problem. Right there. No, if you have to do everything, then you have to do everything. You can't tell me you have to do everything and say, well, you can't do everything. Well, why not? They said, well, no. They say, well, you can't do everything, Jeff. It's not realistic. I said, well, I'm talking about being realistic. Listen, let's say if it takes everything, then let's figure out what everything means. So the only question is, you can do everything for one kid. So the question is, are we dealing with one kid? We're dealing with 20 kids. What's the number? We came up with a number. We said our first starting number is going to be 3,000 kids. We said we're going to go in an area, we're going to carve an area out, and for those kids, we were going to do everything. Had some folk who sort of saw the numbers and how this thing was going to go. They said, we're going to call it. They said, well, Jeff, you're never going to pull that off. You see the number? I said, look, I'm not going to worry about that right now. Let's just see if we can figure out what to do. So this is what we did. We focused on an area, started with 22 square blocks. We did 4 big things. We first focused on rebuilding community. Why? Community matters. Just matters. You cannot have kids growing up where the first time they walk outside their door, they realize they're in a place that people wouldn't be caught dead. You could just look around. You know, look, you don't have to, again, do the research as you want, but I could drop you in places in this country you could take one look and say, this is not a good place. Now, you don't have to go and say, why would you say that? That's not a nice thing. Don't be prejudicial about it. Right, you know what I'm saying? There's a response. Oh, no, you know that. No. Go right in there and you know this is not a safe, I do not want to be here. This is not a good place. And kids know it too. So if you have places like playgrounds that are filled with glass, violence, children can't play, what does that do to the families in that community? Well, it means that those kids can't go outside. Now, if you're a mother, you got 3 kids, you're locked up in an apartment, little tiny apartment in Harlem, playgrounds don't work, where do you spend your interaction with your children? Stop, don't jump on there, come on, no, you may not, but do not throw that ball in. It is a constant series of no's and don'ts. Apartments aren't made as playgrounds. So you have playground right down the block. There's guys in there selling drugs. The place is filthy. The equipment is cement. The kids fall, they break their arms and legs. No, we can do something about that. That's not hard. We began to form block associations. We began to form tenant associations. We began to train a group of adults to focus on their areas. And we started with one building and then one block. And the funny thing is, once we got one block done, people get that. See, people come in now, the places people are trying to save Harlem for, 50 years. Came in the 50s, they came in the 60s, and here I come, the 2000. I'm going to say, oh yeah, Jeff's going to say what's not sure. Once you had a block that people could see, they say, oh yeah, 119th Street, oh, had something to do with 119th Street, what happened over there? That place looks all right. Suddenly we didn't have to do a lot of convincing folks what this thing took. They said, we want that same thing happening on our block. So we got these leaders, we got corporations to come in and volunteer. Let's volunteer doing projects. We cleaned up stuff, we painted stuff, we planted flowers. Well, when we did this, we actually charted it on the wall, everything we did to rebuild. I said, 5 years from now, people will come, to hear, and they'll say, what's Jeff talking about? This place looks wonderful. I don't get it. And that's what people say when they come in there. Wow, look at the real estate marketplace is unbelievable. We can show you where we began to physically change what that place looked like. But we did it by building leadership in local residents. We actually sent them away to programs that taught them leadership skills. One of the problems in communities like Harlem is that the people who care often don't have the skills necessary to do the work. So they want to run a meeting, but no one's ever taught them how to run an effective meeting. And you walk in one of those meetings, the meeting starts late, they never stay on time, there's no agenda, there's no minutes from the last meeting, the same person over there is talking about the same thing that has nothing to do with the meeting. After a while, after 3 months of that, all the good people stop going and only the crazies come. And believe me, it's a group of crazies that love these meetings. And they just can't wait. And so, you know, then you wonder why nothing happened. But we had to actually begin to teach people real skills. We had to teach them, you have to have an agenda. Meeting starts at 8, meeting starts at 8. I don't care if there's 2 people, meeting starts at 8. Meeting's over at 9, meeting's over at 9. We're not going to, don't at 8:59, you come up with a prayer. I want to talk about abortion. I know, the meeting is over. We're not getting into that issue right now. When you began to ask people to really play a role in community, this is not some idea, oh no, Miss Jones is able to go. No, Miss Jones got 3 kids, she's struggling. She does care about her community. But boy, she needs some training, she needs some support. We gave people computers, we gave them printers. So you don't have to go figure out, you want to get something done, you have to go beg and borrow someone to go and figure out. No, you do it right in your home, so you get the leaflets done, you get the stuff out so that leaders begin to be created from local communities. Now, while we were doing that, we did this second thing, which was to create best practice programs at each developmental stage of the child's life. Now, I will tell you, simple concept, there's no community that I have been in like Harlem with children of failing where it exists. We start from birth, something we call baby college for parents. Just teaches them what we know about raising children and brain development. Our parents don't hear that stuff. They just simply don't know. This is what we know. If you were a lousy parent, your child is probably not going to do well, and your child is probably going to be a lousy parent. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that maybe someone had to do something with that parent so they learn some skills about parenting. There is a whole science on this fairly young group. When you have a child and you have a college education, you begin to realize one of the reasons you got an education is that you could learn stuff about something you know nothing about. And you will not hear anything. Someone says, oh, your child is so-and-so, you will be on the internet, you will be looking up stuff, you will be trying to figure out what does this mean, what should I be doing, if you have not had that set of skills, you just simply don't know. And what you know is what you were taught. And if it was wrong, you just continue to repeat it. So we start with baby college. We have a 4-year-old program, best practice. You know what best practice is? Best practice means there's some scientific evidence that the program works if it's followed in a loyal way. Meaning that if I'm doing a program for 4-year-olds, I want to say, who has a program for 4-year-olds where they have shown that these kids have advanced? And if I can be faithful to their program description, then I have some reason to suspect my own kids are going to advance. The problem with best practice is that it costs money, because it talks about qualifications of staff and ratios of students to staff. For communities, you never get best practice. You get mediocre practice. You get the best. What was the best we could do? No, we couldn't get the master's level person. We got someone with a BA. That's the best we could do. I have not found one shred of evidence anywhere that mediocre practice actually produces positive results. I've just never seen it. You don't do that. All of that. Get rid of all that stuff. You could do this like this, and it produces results just fine. There's no evidence of that at all. So the moment you change that program from best practice and you become mediocre, there's not one shred of evidence that it works anymore. Now, where does all the mediocre practice happen? In the poor community. In the poor community. That's where there's no longer best practice. So we got a 4-year-old program We have student-teacher ratio 4:1. Master's level teachers. The program starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, ends at 5:45 in the evening, goes 11 months a year. Guess what happens? 100% of our children, not 85, not 92, not 90, 100% of our children enter kindergarten ready to learn. That when you begin to say, what are the skills the child needs for kindergarten? We teach our kids in 3 languages, French, English, and Spanish. They know how to count in 3 languages. They know their alphabets in 3 languages. They know their days of the week in 3 languages. They know the months of the year in 3 languages. And you know why? Because if you do it in 3 languages, there's absolutely no reason any 5-year-old should be walking in the kindergarten not knowing it in their native language or knowing it in the language they're going to be taught. There's just no reason. I don't care if the kid's bilingual. There's no reason. You can teach a 4-year-old what they need to know in a year for them to enter kindergarten, ready to learn, regardless of how they came to you. Now, that happened. It happened. And this is what happened after we did it, why we started our own school. So we trained this group of 4-year-olds. They're now doing all of this in 3 languages. It's time to go to kindergarten. We send them to the local public school. 60% of the kids in the local public school don't know the alphabet. So what does the teacher do? You teach to the most kids. So the teacher's going over the alphabet. Now my kids know the alphabet in 3 languages, right? So now the teacher's teaching the alphabet in English. How long do you think before my kids are totally bored? They're just sitting there. They're not paying attention anymore. They want to run around the classroom. They want to do all this other stuff. So you can't fix part of this thing and leave the other part broken. Because guess what happens to my kids after a year? They look just like all the rest of the kids. Because no one's keeping that curve going upwards. And the kids begin to come back down to where the other kids are. So then we said, well, wait a second. We got to create our own schools. We got to create our own schools because we have to make sure that these teachers are prepared to keep these kids moving forward. Because think of all that work we did. It's just for nothing. That happens all across America. You will find that it's not that we're not doing good work. There are lots of places where really good, high-quality work is going. Lots of places that it's not. I'm not saying it's all high-quality work. But we're not connecting that effort. So what you do with the kid at 9, when you finish with that kid, that someone's picking that kid up at 10 to make sure that those children continue to progress. My own equation, I believe communities have a certain gravity. And just like you have to get an escape velocity to get away from the gravity of the earth, you've got to get an escape velocity to get these kids away from the gravity of their communities. If the community is constantly pulling kids back to a norm that is negative and dangerous. So if the communities, if you look and say, oh, the kids are in gangs, they're carrying guns, they're drinking and smoking, well, if that's the norm, then that's where most kids are going to end up. And every time you try and get a kid away from that, so the kids say, no, don't drink, don't hang out, don't smoke, don't hang out with those guys. But then your friends, they say, look, when you coming with us, you going to get high, what's up? Say, no, I don't get high. All right. Tomorrow, what are they going to ask you? Going to get high or what? Oh, I don't get high. How many times can you tell them no? Or you just say, oh, yeah, okay, I'll try it. So that's gravity. So we're trying to get an escape velocity to get those kids out of that. Very difficult if you get the kids started and then you stop. And you stop at 10, guess what? By 12, that kid's right back. You stop at 14, guess what? By 16, that kid's right back. So people have been doing a lot of work, but it is not connected. We have a series of programs that started first, like a conveyor belt, and connects those kids straight through till they go off to college, and then we help them get through college. Now, this is another sort of revolutionary thing for us because I said college. It used to be high school. In my mind, all the data suggested if kids got a high school diploma, then they had these positive outcomes. The problem is that we live in a global economy. A high school diploma won't get you anything in America anymore. And 10 years from now, I mean, it's a joke right now. 10 years from now, it's just going to be useless. So these kids got to get through college. Now, I was giving a talk to, they had some, a group of really nationally renowned researchers, evaluators at Teachers College, and I came and gave a talk to about getting these kids through college. This is when you can be too smart. y'all are very smart, so you have to watch this. This is a problem. A person stood up and said, Jeff, that's really, I love your program. I just think this is wonderful, and you're really, you're altruistic. You're out there helping. He said, but it's never going to work. That whole getting everybody to college thing. He says it's laudable. He says there's not one shred of evidence in this country or in the world that anyone has taken a group of kids from where you're taking them from and gotten that group en masse through college. He said there's simply no evidence of that. There's no research around it, and I'm not trying to discourage you. Right? But he said, but that's just the truth. And I thought that's the problem. That's it. If it existed, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't need to be doing it. I mean, that's the problem. I'd be following what somebody else was doing. That's the whole point of the whole thing. So you can't take the evidence and say, therefore, you can't do it. Because we would be nowhere, right, as a species, if everybody was, well, no one ever did that before. I didn't no evidence. I've looked through all the annals of time. There's no such thing as a wheel. Where are we going to go with that? I mean, this is a problem when you get too smart. I mean, part of this is, yes, is it difficult? Yes. Is it challenging? Yes. Is it going to require some thinking outside the box? Absolutely. Is it doable? Absolutely, yes, it's doable. No one would be saying that in an upper middle class community. Simply wouldn't be saying. They simply would say, oh, no, come on, that's a ridiculous expectation for you to think these kids are all going to college. Do all the kids in upper middle class, they don't all go to college. They don't all go to, but it is the expectation. It is the expectation, and once that expectation starts to lower, guess what happens to those kids? Guess what happens to those kids? We know what that's about. So, we've got this conveyor belt. Third thing we're dealing with is scale. Right now, in our zone area, we have about 6,500 kids. We're in the process of raising the money to serve another 4,000 kids. Because we want to work with about 10,000 children at a time. Why? We know that in New York, got about 1,100,000 children in our school system. We know about 250,000 of those kids simply aren't going to make it. Not going to finish school, drop out of school, end up where? All the systems costing us what? Huge amounts of money. Huge amount. I mean, the amount of money, and I keep telling you this, us, I'm coming out of our pocket. This is not like Bush is up there printing money and taking out of his pocket. This is our money we're spending on these same kids because they didn't get an education the first time. They're not paying taxes. They're costing us a fortune. And when you say so, okay, we know we have 250,000 kids who are going to be in trouble. What's our infrastructure to save those kids? You find programs maybe for 50,000 kids. Maybe. If you really push, maybe you could get 75,000. What happens to all the rest of those kids? We simply have no way of dealing with them. Look, programs don't tend to work when they get past about 250 students. You can look at great model programs and great schools and stuff. They're small. They're small. People say you can't do this whole big sort of, factory way of going in and creating these big. They don't work anymore. You can't. Well, it's fine, but we're not going to get there by 200 kids at a time. It's not the kind of numbers that's in need. So we're out there. We're looking to do 10,000 kids. We think this issue of scale is absolutely critical. The fourth thing that we're dealing with is evaluation. For us, this issue is absolutely critical because this is a science. This is what we're doing. It's just complicated. And that's how people working with young people is not rocket science. It's much harder than rocket science. We figured out how to get rockets into outer space sometime before World War I. And since then, there's been some changes, but basically hydrogen is hydrogen, and oxygen is oxygen. And once you figured it out, you kind of figured it out. You know, if you work in a school, have a little boy, Malcolm. At 8 o'clock, Malcolm is one kind of little boy. By 9:30, something has happened to Malcolm. He has now transfigured into something totally different, and you don't know who this is now like discovering a new element. You now have discovered, and then Malcolm interacts with 15 other kids, and he changes them. And so by lunchtime, your school is out of control. And you can't figure out whatever happened because Malcolm has an infinite number of responses that he might give to any number of situations he runs into. And your job is to try and manage that with 300, 400, 500 kids. That's a pretty impossible job. The ability it takes to understand how we can have these kinds of diverse children coming from these kinds of communities and provide a structure where they can be successful is going to take some real scientific breakthroughs in our thinking. And I think we have to evaluate our work. I think we have to be very hard on ourselves. But on the other hand on this, and I'm going to say this, because some of you may end up in these places, foundations have to get real about evaluation. People always come and say, we want evaluations, we want more evaluations, it's harmful with the field. Well, fine. Then be honest with people. Because right now, the way the field is structured, if you give me a grant and you say, how'd it go, Jeff? And I say it went lousy. You take that grant and you say, thank you very much, Jeff, I'm going to find somebody else to fund it. Now, I told you I was kind of a behaviorist, right? So, you're giving me money, and if I give you the wrong answer, you take the money. It doesn't take me long to figure out what that answer should be. How's it going? Great. That's the nature of our business. How's it going? Great. You're not able to tell the truth. You're just not able to tell the truth. And if you can't tell the truth, then you can't change what you're doing to improve. So there's a big conspiracy between funders and practitioners not to be honest about the work. Because now, from the foundation's point of view, they've just given me $100,000. They're bored. They're bored. Well, you gave Jeff that money. How'd it go? Great. Right? And their board said, well, that was smart. That was a smart. They don't want to go and say, oh, no, that thing got all messed up. Jeff, he tried it. People don't know. They don't want to be honest about this stuff. So therefore, we don't have good evaluation. We don't get good data. We haven't pushed the science forward, and so allowed us to stay in the place we're in right now. And I just think this is one of the things that we're going to have to really tackle as an industry, this issue of evaluation. I keep telling people that this is not the shoe business. We're not making shoes. If you're in the shoe business and, the high tops aren't selling, you go in and say, high tops didn't sell, we're selling low tops, that's fine. Either way, you're going to make money. We're in like the cancer business. See, this cancer business. Now, how long have they been researching a cure for cancer? All your life and all my life. How much money are they raising for cancer research this year? A lot more than anybody else you know of is raising money. Why is it that even though they have not found a cure, they're not close to finding a cure? The cancer research people, and you know how they measure success in cancer? Number of days you live. They say, look, we spent $15 million developing this drug. We gave this person nothing. We gave this person a drug. This person lived 2 days longer. We think this drug is promising. What? Well, yes. Yes. So, do you think after they get to 2 days, they go to people and say, how do you go? 2 days. Oh, we're cutting off cancer. You know, no more money. Oh, yes, they will get plenty of money. You know why? Because people with money worry about cancer. Right? They all think it could get you. Right? And so they hope, everybody hopes to hope they solve it before it's my turn. Right? And that'll make you put your money up. And there's huge money. In our work, we have to measure some of this in the equivalence of data. Some of this is going to be small steps. It's not going to be these massive, gigantic, oh, you broke through and all of these kids were sometimes it's going to be small steps. They ought to be appreciated for what it is. If the end result of that is people take away the money, if you're honest about what you've done, then you learn how most people have learned that's simply not to be honest with this work. And everything is great, and everything is working. You talk to everybody in the field, say, how's it going? It's going terrific. Having trouble? No trouble at all. Everything's going fine. Simply not the case. It is part of the reason that in our industry you have so many mediocre programs. We talk about leadership. There is a real lack of accountability. Now, I'm going to just say one word of accountability, and I'm going to stop it and take some questions. In the end, someone has to be held accountable. And it has to be a clear set of goals that you're holding the organization accountable for. So when we started our school, I told everybody, so we're going to educate these kids. We started with kindergartners and we started with 6th graders. Everybody said, Jeff, stick with the kindergarten. He said, those kindergartners, do not mess with those sixth graders. You don't know what you're getting into. I said, no, look, everybody will get it if I deal with kindergarten, but they're going to think you can throw these other kids away and say you can't help them. So we have to take a stand. They said, but you're risking everything by fooling around with those sixth graders. They're going to say the program's not working, even if the kindergarten and the primary school stuff is going well. I said, I understand that, but we've got to take a stand, and we've got to do this, and we've got to focus on those middle school students. So, get our middle school students, and yes, they're right, they're 2.5 years behind grade level, and it's a struggle, there's always something new, and it's a challenge, and people are worried about how we're doing, and we're not doing as good as we wanted to be doing, and the scores didn't go up as much as we wanted the scores to go up. So there's a lot of angst in the U.S. from the organization. But this is wrong. Because I told everybody, and I was honest, I said, got 5 years, and if I don't educate those kids in 5 years, I'm going to fire myself from this work. I told the mayor, I told the chancellor, I told my board, I told the principals, I told the teachers, I told the parents. I said, I'm going to fire myself, and I'm going to be the last one to leave for my agency. Everybody else is going before me. Now, my staff, they heard that, they got that. I'm leaving. But boy, I'm going to be the one turning out the lights. There's going to be nobody left here. We're all going to be accountable. You see, if I'm worried and you're home, you're sleeping over the weekend, and I'm sitting here trying to help these kids, and you don't feel like it's part of your job. Oh yeah, these kids might fail. But if I know, we all know, if these kids fail, we lose our jobs. We're out of this business. Totally different attitude about success. This becomes personal now. You're liable to do some things you weren't going to do. You're liable to spend some time doing some stuff you weren't planning to spend, because you know in the end, someone's going to be held accountable, and it's us. And if you believe, and I tell people come in and say, well, I don't know about this, Jeff. I said, look, if you take the job, it's because you believe you can do the work. If you believe you can do the work, then you have to hold yourself accountable. My job is to make sure you get whatever resources you need to do the work. But don't come here and then say, oh, the reason I couldn't do this, Jeff, was because Tommy's mother is on heroin. And I don't want to hear all that, right? We're doing whatever it takes to save Tommy. That's the name of the business. Educators have to elevate their game. We've been trapped into believing, that all of these other things, which are true, it's harder, it's much harder. When you've got all these social issues, you've got poverty, the kids are living sometimes in chaotic houses, look, it makes it hard. But that's all it is. It's just hard. It's not possible. It's not even close to being impossible, it's just hard. It means somebody's got to work harder, you got to work smarter, you have to be more intense. That's what this work. If you want to come into the field, then that's what you have to be prepared to do. If you want to come in and work in poor communities the same way you would work in upper middle class communities, then you need to go somewhere else. That's not, because it's not going to work. It's simply not going to work. And the problem is they don't pay you more, right? If they paid you and gave you, if we paid people based on the challenge that education provided, you'd have folks making $1 million a year. You would. You'd have superstars. I know people in these other businesses. Look, my son's a lawyer. My oldest boy, he's a lawyer. He came out of law school. He got a job right up here in Boston. The choke. They paid him 6 figures walking out of law school. I said, Julia, they paying you that? I said, what are you doing? I don't know. He's out of law school. They got to train me. They know that. They're going to train. They say, oh, yeah, it's going to take up 2-3 years for them to train me. I said, wait, they're going to pay you $115,000 a year and train you because they know you don't know nothing? He said, yeah. Who invented that racket? You know what? You know what? This is the deal. You go in, you sign on the dotted line, you get the money, but they get your time. They get you first thing in the morning, they get you till 9 or 10 o'clock at night, they get you on Saturdays, they get you on Sundays, right? And if you pass after 6-7 years, then you get the buy-in, right? Become a partner. If you can survive, well, I don't think there's anything different in education. I think it's exactly the same. I think it takes exactly the same kind of people who are prepared to put in that kind of time and energy to make a difference for children. That's not the way education is structured in America. The deal is, you don't make a lot of money, but you get a lot of time off, right? And somehow we have to get people who accept that as the bargain. The folks who are really serious about this work. It's hard to figure out how to make a career out of being an educator. And it's something we got to change in the country. And I think there are a number of us pushing up against that envelope that says we got to pay people serious money to come in here and demonstrate that they can get these kids to perform where other people can't. So that's the work we're involved in. I think that's the challenges we're going to face the next 10 or 15 years. I think it's going to be huge for this country. And I'm going to stop here and be open to take questions.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Canada. Thank you for coming to speak with us. My name is Terrence Gilchrist, second year Master in Public Administration student here at the Kennedy School. Appreciate your talks and how you discuss evaluation, the importance of accountability, behaviorism, changing the environment, like cleaning up playground, that kind of thing. But I'm still stuck with something I wish clarified. This is really a question about what's the next step. So you educate these children and you work with them, get them through college. But it still sounds to me that you have them invested in a very middle-class kind of lifestyle and the very system that has produced the kind of conditions from which they're coming from. And so I want to know what kind of feedback are the students giving you and what kind of work will they be doing to kind of transform the very system in which they've come out of.
I mean, well, you know, I knew y'all were already getting too deep for me on the first question. So this is really a serious question because this is what's happening in Harlem, and it's very complicated. And 3 years ago, I'd have given you, I think, a different answer than I'm giving you right now. Part of my theory was, I'm going to go to Harlem, I'm going to create this infrastructure for this architecture for these kids to succeed. The kids are going to go off to college, they're going to come back into the community, and they're going to rebuild their community. And you're going to have a bunch of folks with lots of different skills coming in. But in the process of doing that, the community became too expensive for anybody to buy a place to live. So now I'm thinking, these kids will go off to college, they come back, they'll probably come back and stay with their parents for a year or two, 3. They can't afford to live here. Right? They can't afford to. So now, how do you get that cycle where you're rebuilding a community? And I don't know what that's going to mean for Harlem. What I have said to other places is there's one mistake I've made in doing this work. There was an opportunity for us to control some housing. And I did not want to get into real estate. It's a horrid business. And so but if you're going to rebuild a community, you better control some land. Because folks will come in much quicker than you think. And they'll buy it, so it'll be a great community for somebody else, right? And so that's a real challenge. It's something we're going through with Harlem right now. With folks, we did a lot of stuff with trying to get people to buy local housing and some other stuff. And it's worked to some degree, but not nearly to the scale. So 10 years from now, I'm not sure what that's going to mean in Harlem. Let me maybe get to a little bit of an underlying question I think you asked of, are our young people, do they understand the system in terms of how this system has I think, work their worst interest instead of their best interest. And I think that the answer to that is probably from a yes to a no. There's a group of our kids who are very sophisticated. There's a work we do in writing a newspaper and producing videos and public service announcements where we actually train kids to be critical thinkers. And so they understand that, they get it, they understand politics. There's a group of our kids who are just like, I don't know what to do. This guy keeps bugging me and telling me to come, so I'm just here, right? And they just sort of go through the program, and they're not conscious about it. And you hope at some point they're going to be conscious. And there are a group of our kids who are just borderline. They got 1 foot in a jail cell and 1 foot with us, and we're still having that war, and that war will continue. There are a group of my kids that have gone to college that I am connecting directly to businesses that we have relationships with. And for that group of kids, there's a conversation that goes something like this. There's absolutely no reason that I should do this for you, meaning use one of my contacts to get you in a job at, Lehman Brothers, where you're going to come in making real big money. The deal is you're going to have to do that for somebody else, and that's just the deal. And I think these kids, if you've been with them for a while, I think they get it. They understand. If they're stepping into these worlds that you're preparing them to go into. When we send our kids into these sort of Wall Street environments and some of the other, but it's the first time they've ever seen this stuff. This is totally great to them, and they're learning it as 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds. But it's a great introduction. The question is, can you keep them connected to, I think, their communities in a way that they feel like, well, there's something I can bring back from that. If we got a 20% return on that investment, it would be great. I mean, if 20% of my kids said, look, I want to do something with my own life to make it, I think that would be a terrific return, and I think we're probably going to get close to it. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Canada. Thank you for your very engaging talk. My name is Carolina Drianska. I'm a first-year student in the public policy program at the Kennedy School, and I have two questions. One is a question about scale. You run a really comprehensive program that's really expensive, and it provides services that probably the government should provide. And how do you see it being expanded or replicated? Because I don't really see how all of those investments can be put in there. And
think about the second one while I try and answer the first one, but that could take me a while. This is one of the challenges that we have faced. We, as one program that has sort of a structure, an organizational structure that allows me to really keep a certain level of accountability from birth right through the kids go away to college. We run all the programs. We do best practice. If you go see my preschool program, you say, oh, that's a great program. You see my high school program, say, wow, that's a great program. You see my middle school program, say, wow, that's a great program. So we're able to do best practice across. I don't think that's realistic. It's difficult enough in most places across the country. I think it's a real leadership issue. For people to even do one program for one age group at a best practice level. But there's not a lot of that in America right now. A lot of our programs are mediocre and they're not really very strong. So I think it's unrealistic for us to assume that there's going to be one agency, like one organization that's going to be able to do that work. And so the question becomes, can organizations collaborate to do this work? And I think the answer is a tentative yes. The problem with collaboration, here's a job for somebody in here, is that there is no current architecture that has been developed to get not-for-profits to collaborate with one another. Foundations keep saying, well, you're in the same community, you're doing, why can't you all simply just get together? Well, look, my theory is I like to look for the for-profit world for lots of examples. I say, well, show me a for-profit example where that has happened. You know, if for-profits want to collaborate, who they can get their lawyers. The lawyers, they spend an inordinate amount of time thinking of everything that could possibly go wrong. And every reason not to do this, and then they sit down with the board, they say, look, if you do this, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to get this, you're going to get that. Then after all of that, maybe there's a deal that's worked out, right? They think not-for-profits are going to get together, they're going to shake hands, and you're going to structure a deal. It's just not realistic. So we haven't figured out a way to really, since not-for-profits don't have lawyers, to go in and structure deals and say, this is what you're going to get out of it, this is what we're going to get out of it, it's going to help, figure out how it's going to help us both. People just assume that you can just think it through and reach that conclusion. That's not realistic. So there needs to be collaboration. It doesn't happen right now. We need some folk who really figure out how you get organizations to be able to collaborate when you've taken all the things that could go wrong. What happens to my fundraising? What happens to my ability to deal with my reputation if you do something wrong and they think it's part of me? I mean, you got all of these questions, and people find it easier to simply say, oh yeah, we'll collaborate, which means, we'll go to a couple of meetings together, but we really won't develop this sort of intense relationship. So I think that's a challenge. I think more than likely, you asked about governments. There are a number of governments that are really looking at the Harlem Childrens Zone, and the mayor of LA had come up for about maybe a month ago to take a look at San Francisco. They're already trying to do a program that's designed partially on the Harlem Children's Zone. In Richmond, California, they're doing something. And so we're getting some cities that are focused on this. We know some of the larger folks on the national level are starting to take some interest in this. This is the political challenge. I think the federal government ought to be really pushing this as a model. The current budget crisis in America suggests to me that there will be no money in theory. Again, this money is all theoretical, because one of the things I've learned about money is it's really not real. In theory, there will be no money. Well, no, I'm going to tell you why I think it's not real, because when the Clinton folks ran, I went to the Clinton folks and said, look, we've got this huge surplus. This would be the perfect time to do a major investment in education. With all these crumbling buildings, we could take maybe 60, 70 $1 billion and do something over here and take another 200 billion. They said, Jeff, no, you don't understand budget. They said, you know, if you have a surplus, you have to put this away for a rainy day. This is like, you know, you have to have a reserve. So then Clinton leaves, Bush comes in. 2 weeks later, I'm like, where did the rain? I never saw the rain. What happened? Like, right, so now you go to Bush, they don't have any money. They give all the money away overnight. So now we had trillions in surplus, we now have trillions in deficit, right? And so we still can't do, and so that's when I realized, you know what? It's got nothing to do with this. It's really about political will to get some of this stuff done. But I want to just tell you that when we get the next president, probably going to be Democratic, just based on, you know, what it looks like the Bush folks, they'll have no money. They have no money, and everybody's going to say you have to balance the budget. So they're going to come and say, oh, this is a great idea, because they're sorry, we have no money. Bush will find plenty of money for the war. It'll just keep going. And it's a theoretical thing. It's just, so if they cared about this issue enough, they will find money. I think that's where, when I say there's politics in it, and this whole oppression thing, there's politics in it. It's just people will accept that the American people will always go into debt for war. No problem. Oh, they had to borrow $17 billion more this month? No problem. No one blinks an eye. They won't go into debt for these kids. It's not in their consciousness, but that's just the way it has been, not the way it has to be. So I think that there's some real public policy issues that we've got to push. I am not going to make this, and people come to me, they want to give me some money if I can make it cheaper. I'm not going to make it cheaper. I'm not going to make it, because it's really got nothing to do with the money. In and of itself, it's really going to save the nation money in the long run. It's not about the money, it's about the political will. And I don't want to spend time on one end when it's really about the other. So this is about saying to people, it's unethical, immoral, and maybe almost evil to continue investing money here and not putting the money up there for these kids. So I think that there are some places that are trying to do this right now. People in Rochester, up in New York, they want to do it through the school, and folks are trying. So I think that's going to continue. We have not pushed this, because our belief is we shouldn't push it until we get some real, we got programmatic data, but we get our real clear data of our model when the kids that started with us at baby college take their 3rd grade reading exam. And those kids are in the 1st grade right now. So a group of kids, probably only 5 years old, who started with us at baby college, who then went to our 4-year-old program, who then went to our kindergarten program. Now we're in the 1st grade. 2 years from now, they'll be in the 3rd grade. They'll take their 3rd grade exam. We think that's the first real clear measure for us to say, we think we got something here, even though there's lots of evidence programmatically that kids are advancing in the right way. At that point, I think we're going to get much more aggressive. If you realize that'll be right about the time of the election, then there's nothing to do with that. We'll see. We'll start to push this issue, I think.
All right, so my second question is, you talked about Harlem transforming itself,
Yes.
and there's another issue. I think that Harlem is also being transformed from the outside, that gentrification is moving up from the Upper West Side. And how do you see that interaction?
I mean, it's been unbelievable for us. We thought that things would start to change about now. But one of the things I've learned, some of the best social scientists in the world are real estate speculators. They really are. They see the trend before anyone else. And they get in early, and they buy stuff up, and they know this is the next place this is coming. And they went and bought up lots of Harlem. And I think that's going to be a challenge for the community. I mean, we've gone from places where 1 bedroom, when Harlem, we started in Harlem. Harlem was a place that you went to if you lost your job and things started to fall apart. Oh man, I'm going to have to move back to Harlem, man. I don't know how I'm going to make it. I need a 1 bedroom I get it for $600 maybe. 1 bedroom's going $1,400, $1,500 a month. It's like crazy. It's like crazy in Harlem. It's a place, you know, it's just, it's over. That whole period is over, and I think it's made a lot of pressure on folk who live there to remain. I was talking to someone earlier who first came in about the Starbucks, and when Starbucks opened on 125th Street, I said, if that place is still open a year from now, there goes the neighborhood, right? It's been open about 4 years now, right? But I said, when people have that kind of disposable income, right, chances are this is going to be a different community we're going to have, and you'll see all of the name brand stores and all the other things. So now, one of the challenges that I see is not to allow what happened in places like the South End in Boston and some other places happen in Harlem, where suddenly no poor people can afford to live there anymore, and everybody we're focused, a couple of big housing projects in the area we're focused on, and there are a couple, it's really the issue is not to allow people to sell their apartments. Because one of the things people come in, who have rent control apartments, they'll come in and say, we'll give you $5,000, we'll give you $10,000 for your apartment. And people who've never had that kind of money before think that's great until they go try and find another place to live. And they realize that, that they're not going to be able to afford it. So there's lots of work to be done. I think that the market forces are the market forces. You could wish it wasn't so strong. It didn't happen so fast. It did. And I think we just have to make the best of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there.
Hi.
I was sitting in your chair. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay. My name is Liza Pappas. I'm a student here at the Ed School, but I also spend some time at one of the Boston Public High Schools, Brightenheim. And when I've heard you talk today, and I've heard you talk actually a few times now, I have a lot of questions about leadership. Or your speaking raises a lot of questions about leadership for me. And we live in a world where there are a variety of definitions of leadership, often competing. And so I guess the question that I have is, how would you define leadership? And what would you advise us in terms of those of us who are going forward in social justice work? What kind of leadership do you see that, is that central to that work?
Well, this is a question, and I got in trouble with this question with some young people who came and said, we want to be leaders, and we are leaders. And they came and I said, well, you're not leaders. And they said, no, we are leaders. You're not leaders. Typically what has happened to folk who come into our agency as young people is that they come in raring to go, changing the world, about to get us old people out of the way. It lasts about 2.5 months. Then they say, that Jeff works you to death. This guy is, he just never stops. And it's always a couple of things about leadership. I don't think people, it's not only talent, what you have to have. Now, let me just say that. If you don't have talent, it's hard to be a leader. Now, you can be a leader on some other things, simply determination. I see people who are just determined. You don't have to be so talented, they're so determined, but boy, talent helps. Stamina. I have found that people aren't prepared for the kind of grueling career you have to be a leader. People thought I suddenly popped up on the scene 5 or 6 years ago. I have been at this work for 20 years, and the same rate, same pace, same intensity, and no one cared. And then no one, and that's just, the people find that hard to believe. No one cares. You'll be slaving away at something and no one cares. Every now and then, right, something happens, you get on a radar screen. So I'm on a radar screen now, but I know that's an illusion, right? Because I was there 20 years, no one cared. I was on no one's radar screen. It wasn't that I was any less talented than I am right now, right? It was just that's the nature of our business. And I think that people find that daunting. You could be out here, like really working really, really hard all that time and like getting nothing? Yeah. Like that's part of the deal. And I found people, but this is what happens, and this is a problem. I found people, they do that, and nothing happens. They say, I gotta leave. I gotta find something else. This is not working. I should be somewhere else now in my career, and I need to know, what's that leadership path again, Jeff? How is it that you go? And I was like, I've been at the same job 23 years, right? And that's just, if you care enough about something, that you are passionate and committed, and you're determined to work. I done worked through administrations that said our way of doing things was just taboo. They just did not believe in community stuff. 15 years later, it's all the rage. They say, oh, it's all about community. I said, you know what? When I started, y'all hated this stuff. You know, so tell us how terrible this was. Well, if you're not prepared to pay those kind of prices, right, that when people love it, it's wonderful. They say, oh, yeah, it's in now. What happens when people turn? They say it's not in no more. They say, oh, well, let me try that stuff don't work anymore. Then the question is, are you prepared as a leader to be out there when no one's out there with you. And I think that's the hard thing about leadership. It's easy to lead. From where I am right now, it's easy to lead, right? When people say, oh yeah, this Jeff, he was in the time of, yeah, fine. When you're out there and nobody knows your name and you listen, well, that guy's crazy, man. That's a crazy guy. He's still talking about that same old stuff. So that is really difficult, and I find that people are not prepared to be out in front of an idea that's not popular. And once you begin to try and make your ideas popular, because say you're leading, there may be nobody following you. And this is the funny thing, because sometimes you're out there leading, you are leading by yourself. And that is a tricky thing. I've got 1,000 people that work for me now. So if I want to make it look like I got a crowd, I just tell all my people to leave work and come on. Look at that. A whole bunch of people believe in Jeff, right? No, this is just employees, right? But you could do stuff like that when but there were times there was nobody there. And then the question is, what happens? It's very isolating. When you're out not-for-profits and you're balancing the budget and you're worried about payroll, the ability to find a place where you can heal yourself is extremely critical. Most folk I know burn out in this field before they ever reach their potential. Just can't do it. Just can't do it. They can't find a place they can heal themselves where they can say, boy, that was bruising. What a year. I got my butt whipped. But I'm okay. And I can get recharged and I get re-energized and I can go out there again. You could go through 10 or 12 years like that before things click. And I find that's two things. Sometimes things click, but you burned it and you're not ready for it, and then you go out and then you make mistakes because you've just been in the field too long. And sometimes things click and people aren't prepared. They just aren't prepared for what comes in the door. So I think when you ask about leadership, those are some of what I would consider to be some of the intangible things that I have seen around this issue. Let me just say this last thing. I think a leader has to know when to leave. I think a leader has to know when to leave. I tell people I got 6 years, I'm leaving. That's it. When I'm 60, I'm not going to be running the Harlem Childrens Zone when I'm 75. Right? That is not like what I aspire to. And the problem is, there are a lot of leaders, in particular in this business, that once you reach a certain point in your career, you hang on too long. You don't leave when you're at the top and the organization is at the top. And you stay so long that nobody can tell you to leave. Right? Everybody says, oh, Jeff, he built it. I know it's not so good no more. What are you going to say? You can't run the guy out of here. Well, yeah, you got to run the guy out of here. There's a point where it's about the organization, and I think that part of the challenge around leadership is that we have not invested the kind of, those of us who are older and have been doing this, we have not invested the time, energy, and time it takes to train other people so that they're not relearning what we've already learned. We actually got that and able to take it to the next level, which is why I think it's really hurt the field. So one of the things we're thinking about as an organization is how do we bring young leaders into the organization to begin to help them understand. Because, we were talking about my job in terms of who would replace me in 6 years, and I'm not sure it'll be one person. I'm not sure it could be, but I'm not sure that that's realistic because most of the job I created and I learned as I created, but I don't know that it's natural for anybody to know to do that many different kinds of things. And if you start looking for someone to do that, I think you could really miss some people who could really strengthen the organization. So it gets really tricky, but a lot of this is being able to, I think, have the talent, have the commitment, figure out how to heal yourself so you can go the long distance and not being afraid to walk in front of the crowd, and occasionally knowing that when they say it's lonely at the top, I mean, there's a lot of people have different ways of saying that. What they mean is that in the end, all of my staff thinks their paychecks just appear, every 2 weeks. I think they just show up. Nobody really knows how ugly it is inside the organization creating, the money for things to happen, nor do they care. It's not their job. But as the leader of the organization, you know that that's your responsibility. And there's no one that you can blame or say or hold accountable for some of the stuff. And I think that pressure after a while gets to folks if you don't have a way to deal with it. I've been a martial artist for a long time, and I've always felt that that's one of the things that kept me healed inside of my ability to go out and do martial arts and do so. So I think you have to find a way to do that. I know that was kind of a rambling answer to the question, but
Hi, my name is Lynn Johnson, and I'm a first-year student here. I guess I have two questions. Just hearing you speak, just three things come to mind, kind of the universal belief in that every kid can learn, the integrative approach to solving some of the problems, and kind of collaborative effort. So I guess my two questions kind of focus in on kind of those three things. I'm not sure if those were your intentions, but that's at least what I pulled out. I guess one would be, I guess, the public schools. It seems like, in terms of scale, what room is there for collaboration, especially if you're thinking about going outside of Harlem Zone and applying this model and best practice to maybe a place like Chicago or LA or anywhere, and how in order to take it scale, what role would public schools play in that? I guess the second question happens to do with the integrative approach. When we're talking about poverty, or when we're talking about educating parents and different things of that nature, and how that plays a role in how that plays a role in education, and how education plays a role in those things. But where do you put your finger on that pulse? Like where do you enter the cycle? We know that it's cyclical, but where do you put your finger on the pulse to kind of stop that cycle, or improve that cycle?
Right, so since I've got 5 minutes before I'm supposed to be at my next place doing my next talk, the first question would take me an hour to answer. But let me say a word about public schools, and I do a whole separate talk just on public schools in and of themselves, because while we run charter schools, we also support our public schools, and I invested our money directly in those public schools, because in the end, most of our kids are going to be in public school education. There's just no way of getting around that. And I am a thorn in the side of many educators, because in my opinion, public schools are not designed for success. I always say, if you want to know what something is made for, see what it does. So, you see a machine, you don't know what it does, and at the end, something goes in, it comes out, it's a donut, you figure that's a donut maker, right? That's what the machine does. I don't know much about it. That machine makes donuts, right? I don't care what the parts are. You see a machine that produces kids who underperform for 30, 40 years, you know what that thing does. It produces failing kids. That's what it is. Now, people get mad at me when I say that, because I say that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to do exactly what it does. So people say, no, it's not designed. Well, yes, it is, because that's the end result. And in the end, whatever the machine ends up with is what it's designed to do. The problem with public education and the kids I talk about is that the physics of education simply do not work for my children. Someone, maybe they were brilliant, maybe they weren't, figured out how much a kid could learn in a year, a school year. And they figured it out based on your basic average middle-class kid. And they said, in a year, an average middle-class kid will make 1 year's progress. Well, what is 1 year's progress? It's an arbitrary, right, set of goals that someone set up that said a kid could read this, and now they could read that. He could do this kind of problem, now he could do it. That's a year. That's from 3rd grade to 4th grade. We've got all of these testing which make it seem real, but it's not really real. It is just arbitrary. It's made up. And they figured out with the current school year in America, the average middle-class kid will get from here to here. So this is the physics. But if I've got a school where 75% of my kids are 2 years behind, and I'm using the same calendar, the same number of hours, the same number of days, how am I ever going to catch those kids up? If the whole thing was built on a middle-class school with good teachers, good principals, solid homes, in the same amount of time those kids make 1 year's progress in 1 year's point in time. When I talk about this issue, I tell people, to me this is like, this is a math problem. I had all these things I had to learn in school. I said, I'll never use this. I thought I would never use this math problem, but I use it for this example. If a train left Back Bay Station at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it was traveling 30 miles an hour, and another train left Back Bay Station at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it was traveling at 30 miles an hour, when would train B catch train A? Never. It's never going to happen, right? And such it is, that's the physics of education. It ain't never going to happen. If the kid kids are behind significantly, and we got the same amount of time, how are those kids ever going to catch up? It means we got to extend the school day, we got to extend the school year. That's money. That's money. And then the question is, who's going to do that? Is it going to be the same teachers? Well, you've got to look. This is not even suggesting what happens, and we all know, if you know anything about urban education, and lots of these schools, they are dumping grounds for lousy teachers and lousy principals. Let's say we eliminated that as part of the equation. Just to simply, you still got to deal with this time factor. So if you suddenly got all great principals and all great teachers, you still got to figure out how to get these kids to make more time, catch up, and learn more than their peers in middle-class America. That's not happening anywhere in the nation. That's why the whole thing doesn't work. The physics simply does not work. We let those kids get behind. And once they're behind, if we don't think of how we're going to extend the school day, extend the school year, we're not catching those kids up. And when I go into systems, New York, and they tell me, oh, we're getting a new superintendent, I say, yes, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. If you're not telling me you're starting to spend more money, you get great teachers. Great teachers can do this, by the way. A great teacher can get children to learn more in a period of time. But great teachers don't end up in these schools, and certainly you can't end up in the numbers we need to get it done. So I think those are some of the architectural things that have to happen in the public schools for them to work. And one of the reasons you can't fix a lot of stuff because of the unions, I get in a lot of trouble with this, but in the end, if you run a business and you can't fire people who are poor performers, right? Every business in America would be out of business. You just couldn't run a business. But you can't fire lousy teachers. That doesn't make any sense to me. You can push them into communities, right, which don't have enough power, and parents who don't have enough power to get rid of those people, so they end up in poor communities. That doesn't make any sense. The management of schools, there has to be a certain level of accountability. Believe me, the schools ran across America the way my school's going to run, which is if we don't do the job, we're all going to be out of business. And we are. I'm not kidding about that. I think you have a different sense of what public education is in America. Where do you intervene? I think the dean's just getting up, she knows that I'm about to miss my care. Let me just say one word.
Say one more thing. I just want to make sure we have time to thank you before you have to run on.
Where can you intervene? I think that when you get these cycles of poverty, you go and you look at the cycles of poverty, I think that the one thing that we know is the only equalizing force in America is education. That is it. There is no, I mean, you know, your daddy or your mommy's certainly not going to get inheritance. Maybe they'll hit the number or something like that, but that is so weird. The only way, the one thing I know from my generation, and it was interesting to see it from my generation, a lot of us were the first ones to ever go to college. Our kids now go to college, right? So once you go, then your kids go. It's just sort of a natural thing. So you suddenly look at these, and we all sit around and say, why is that interesting? And it's an expectation that all of them will, and not all of them go, but it's an expectation that all of them, and then you can just look at your grandchildren when you're my age and realize they're all going, because my kids are saving money for their college education. Right now, that is, we had no money to go to college. My mother didn't have any money. There was no saving. There was none of that sort of stuff. So once you crack that barrier, you really not only impact that child, but you impact those generations that are coming. So I think that there's a lot of push on what do we do around poverty. We deal with the earned income tax credit and try and get folks as much money as we can. But we've really decided we're going to intervene with these children. We're going to try and get these kids to college. And we're going to break the cycle for that family right then and right there. Thank you.
Hear from a case study in leadership today, and I encourage all of you to look on the Harlem Childrens Zone website so you can see and hear more about the amazing work that they're doing. Thanks, Jeff. You'll have to come back and tell us more about the story of this incredible organization that you've built. Thank you.
72% of that 50%, you start getting, I'm not real good with math, right? You start getting to some numbers now. It's not to make you say, wait a second, what's going on there? So if you say, where have we gone in all of this time and I'm taking responsibility for this. This is my field, what I do for a living. So I'm not saying someone else's. I'm saying, look, we the practitioners, where have we gone? We've gone backwards. We've actually gone in the wrong direction. This thing is moving and getting worse, and it's not getting better, and it's happening on my watch, right? I'm 54, so there's no one for me to blame, right? This is like, right now, this is what we have allowed to happen. So, what happens to all of these folks? Well, in 1995, 16% of black men were, in their 20s, were in prison. That number has gone to 21% now. By your mid-30s, you've not gone to college. 60% of African American men will have spent some part of their life in jail or prison. So, how many black men are in prison? New York State, somewhere between 31 and 32,000 black men are in prison. You know what cost prison in New York State? State costs about $30,000. In New York City, we've got about 8,000 black men in jail. Cost is $60,000 a year. That's the biggest city. Just think about it. Start put those numbers together. About 40,000. That's 40,000 men. If you look at what we're paying now, I get there. I'm a funny kind of guy because I've gotten a little older. You know, I run some programs, and some of my programs, they get pricey. The program might get up to $12,000, $13,000 per year per child. I'll have these wonderful people come in. Whew, Jeff.
I'm Kathleen McCartney, the acting dean of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the Catherine B. Reynolds Foundation Lecture Series on Leadership. Welcome Reynolds and Zuckerman Fellows, as well as members of the Kennedy School and Ed School communities. This lecture series on leadership features discussions with prominent social entrepreneurs so that students will better understand the challenges they will face as the next generation of leaders in the public arena. I am absolutely thrilled to be here to introduce to you one of our alums who has truly made an impact in the world of education practice. Geoffrey Canada graduated from the Ed School with a master's degree in 1975. And let me tell you, whenever anybody asks whether or not our alums make a difference, it's the first name that I mention. Many of you know he has been focusing his energies and talents on the problems of troubled inner city youth. Since 1990, Mr. Canada has been the president and chief executive officer of the Harlem Childrens Zone. Probably many of you saw the June 2004 cover story of the New York Times Magazine, in which the Zone's project was called, quote, one of the most ambitious social experiments of our time. The Harlem Childrens Zone offers an interlocking network of social services, education and community building programs to thousands of children and families in a 60-block area within central Harlem. Last October, Mr. Canada was named one of America's best leaders by U.S. News and World Report. And just last January, Mayor Bloomberg asked Mr. Canada to co-chair a task force assigned to significantly reduce poverty in New York City. The work of Geoff Canada and the Harlem Childrens Zone has become a national model and has been the subject of many profiles in the media. Perhaps you have seen the Zone's work profiled on The Today Show, Nightline, Charlie Rose, or NPR's On Point. Geoff is also the acclaimed author of a very influential book, Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun, A Personal History of Violence in America. Today, Geoff will be speaking about some of the pivotal points in his career, the challenges that he believes the next generation of social entrepreneurs will face, and some thoughts on the necessary preparation for someone starting
within sort of the groups, the vulnerable groups, vulnerable populations, that you find some really troubling things. So here I have been at this since 1975, actually, which King McCarthy had mentioned that year. I thought none of you were alive then. That's all right, though. That's all right. Maybe one person. But my work and the work that we're doing at Harlem Childrens Zone is really a continuation of the struggle that's been going on in this country from the very beginning. But the part that I'm aware of, the part that I was born into, was the struggle for civil rights for African Americans in America. Then, when I was a kid, growing up, you knew the good guys and the bad guys. It was really clear. There was no sort of fudging around the edges. People had names. You knew the name Bull Connors. Growing up, you heard Bull Connors, you knew. Just anyone said, "Oh yeah, I like Bull Connors," immediately you knew this was an enemy. The KKK. This was in your face. This was a debate that was raging. They weren't apologetic. They were not hiding in the 50s. This was right out there, them saying, if we don't do something, we're going to lose this country. And there was a debate that was going on here in America. The lynchings, Jim Crow laws, all of that stuff was clear. And a group of us as young 12 and 13-year-olds thought, once we straighten out that stuff, this is going to be fine. We're going to have equality. This is going to be a land that, based on your merits, you're going to be able to achieve and do well. And so we created some responses. And the responses are really quite interesting. You had everything from SNCC to the Nation of Islam, to the Black Panther Party. I mean, when I was in college, there was really a left and a right and a center. And we had people who were talking armed revolution. People said, now those were leftists. And then you had people very concerned, said, okay.
As a social entrepreneur. Please join me in welcoming Geoffrey Canada.
And good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. He said some wonderful things about me. I actually wanted her to say some more. No, but usually I say, oh, no, don't go through the whole thing. It's fine. But I was looking at the sort of bio sketches of the folks in this room, and there's some pretty intelligent people in here. I got my thesaurus out, I was going to get like 8 or 9 really big words. And I said, oh, well, I'll just be my regular self. And, but I was absolutely impressed. I'm not kidding. I actually was very impressed at seeing who's here in the room. And it makes me feel hopeful about this country. But I'm going to say some things that may push you and challenge you in some ways. Because I think that my field in particular has disconnected our practice from the political reality of poverty and oppression in America. And there's some things you can do by really perfecting your practice, thinking about what it is that you're doing that's going to have an impact on the folks that you care about. But there are some larger forces at work that I think we can be naive about if we're going to really create in this country true opportunity for all of our children. Recently, a bunch of information has started to come out. Usually this kind of stuff leaks out, but it's really starting to come out pretty rapidly, and I think some major public forums have been held on the plight of poor. I mean, people have started looking just at what's happening to the youth of America in general, right? So, the Gates folk looked at high schools. What was happening with the high school? 30% of American children aren't completing high school. Just shocking number, just shocking. And then you begin to look, okay, well, those folks are. Today, people think Marion Wright Edelman of the Children's Defense Fund is a radical. See what I'm saying? That's an interesting thing. They consider her a radical. They say, oh, that woman is radical. was so centrist, a lot of us would have said we wouldn't even deal with her back in the 60s and the 70s because of a centrist. But the country has shifted over, and our thinking has shifted over, and people have accepted this. And that, some of that is both extremes have died down. The racist group that stood up and said, you know, we are against, like that's died off, and a lot of the extremists about guns has died off. So you say, where are we 50 years later? What has happened? The marches on Washington, the demonstrations, what's changed in America for African Americans? Well, recently the Times put out a report on the status of black men in America, and it looked at in 1980 and then in 2002. And what it found was that in 1980, if you're African American man who did not go to college, that was the group, that 34% of those men didn't have jobs in 1980. By 2004, it was 50%. So, if you dropped out of high school in 1980, you're African American, you're a man, 41% were unemployed. 2002, 72%. 72%. Let's think about that. When you know what 72% of a male population is unemployed, but just start thinking of the third world countries you're thinking about. You would say, oh yeah, 3 out of 4 folks are going to have a job. It's not possible. Look, they're talking about a section of, you know, the folks who are not graduated high school. When you begin to look at the numbers, you find that African Americans about 50% dropping out. Now you think of